understood that kids, they don't think education is fun. If we come off and show them a video of somebody getting tutoring, they're not going to watch it. We realize kids like to save 30% off shopping at Starbucks, for example. Oh, kids also want to know if somebody on Snapchat put them on red, but they don't know about it, right? Or here's how to find if somebody's cheating on you. All at the end of the day are considered education. We're teaching you things that you actually care about. And that was the moment it clicked. Life hacks was the theme. And people knew us as a brand that will teach them things that they care about.
Hey, you found Ways We Learn, an investigation of how learning happens across all ages and modalities. Let's go learn something. Hi, and welcome back to Ways We Learn. I'm Sean, and I'm here with Brian, and we are well into the gig economy. Uber and Lyft are verbs now. You might have stayed at an Airbnb, gotten groceries from Instacart, gotten help from TaskRabbit, or fill in the blank other options that I've not listed. So it's no surprise that someone came up with a tutoring gig service called Kadama. It's one of those, why didn't I think of that kind of things? And I wish I had thought of that, but I didn't. He did. What is a bit surprising is just how popular he has made that service on social media. Kadama is the most popular educational platform on the socials with 2.5 million followers and 1 billion with a B views on TikTok and Instagram. And again, just going to say it again, this is a tutoring platform. So in case you're not following it yet, we're going to put the links to it in the episode notes. But right now I'm going to introduce Amin Shaykho, founder and CEO of Kadama. He's a former Apple engineer who in just a few years made it to the Forbes 30 under 30 list, has a TED Talk under his belt, and has brought Kadama to number 2 on the Apple App Store charts for education. So this should be a really interesting conversation. Amin, thank you for joining Ways We Learn and welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, and very kind words. It's been a roller coaster, and I'm excited to chat with you guys today.
Let's get started with your background. Tell us how you got where you are.
My story right now, it looks super fun, accomplished a lot, thankfully, very grateful, but it started off pretty rough. Immigrant parents didn't have much. Something like going out and buying ice cream from like a typical ice cream store was considered too expensive. So the alternative was we would just buy ice cream from a grocery store because it's way more value and then eat it. And because my parents were immigrant, everything was new. Thanksgiving was new. The holidays here was new. The whole school system. And I had that immediate challenge. I had to figure everything out on my own with not much, help. And not only that, I felt like I had the pressure to create a good future for my family and also be a good role model for my younger siblings. And off the bat, that was how I had to go through it. So I, throughout school, decided to gravitate towards, let me just get a 4.0 and maintain a 4.0 all the way through school, through high school, through college. And even though I don't know what it means and what it will do for me, I feel like it's going to open up doors. But that process ended up forking off into teaching me discipline, that I should be well-rounded. And I got involved in sports, extracurriculars, clubs, and doing these diverse things eventually led me to starting a club my senior year of high school, where we would basically build mobile applications that help nonprofits. And I actually built this at the local community college. I was doing this program where I would actually spend my last 2 years of high school in college. And so I would graduate at the age of 18 with a high school diploma and a college degree. But the point is, I built this club, and it was essentially, if you want to think about it from like a simple term, basically being a CEO. And even though we didn't succeed because, we were super young, it actually was the stepping stone to launching Kadama just a few months later on my high school graduation in the summer of 2016. And that is what helped me kind of get started.
Nice. All right. So you were interested in being an entrepreneur all the way through high school. And you said, I may have missed this, you said that you graduated from high school and college simultaneously? Is that what you said?
Correct. I graduated high school and community college at the same time in 2016. And then I
Wow.
moved to the University of Washington. I entered into the third level courses. So I was able to graduate from the University of Washington with a computer science degrees bachelor's at the age of 20.
Wow, nice. And my takeaway is that you now can buy ice cream from an ice cream store.
Yes, I'm for sure. I'm super grateful to where we are,
Once in a while.
where I am today.
Once in a while. Tell us a little bit about what it was like building Kadama, because you said that the journey in high school and high school / the associate's degree kind of led you towards that path and you launched it right after. So what was it like in those early days as you were trying to build this thing?
Yeah, it's rough. And let me set the high level timeline so you guys can visualize this with me. 2016, I graduate high school. That summer, the inception of Kadama. 2018, 2 years later, I graduated from the University of Washington. That's also when we do our first launch for Kadama. By the way, it goes completely wrong. 2019, we joined an accelerator. I was working at Apple during that time period. So right after graduating the University of Washington, I go work at Apple full time. For the next year, I'm working at Apple, and then we get into the accelerator. 2019, we do a huge pivot, and then finally in 2020, we do a third launch after that pivot. Which during the pandemic, 2020, we discover social media, education is suffering, and that's the launch that made Kadama what it is today. But to go all the way back down now to 2016, me and my co-founder, I was 18, he was 16, and my final co-founder, Danny, who also is my brother, was 14. So you can just think about how much knowledge we have. We were very ambitious, unreasonable expectation, but didn't really know what we were doing. We
Mhm.
were like, okay, well, if we don't have money ourselves, we can't build it ourselves. How do we actually get this started? We don't want to be like all our other friends who come up with an idea and it just completely evaporates. So we were like, let's somehow find a way to make money. I applied for a bunch of computer science internships. He applied for a bunch of business internships. And with no experience, I somehow land a computer science internship in the summer, and he lands an accounting business one. And at the end of the summer, there's $30,000 in our pocket. We take that
Wow.
$30,000 and we're like, okay, we're gonna pay our contractor. We're gonna tell him what the app's gonna do, and they're gonna magically do it. And they told us 6 months, you guys are gonna have the beautiful app that's gonna change the world. So we're like, oh, perfect. That's all we had to hear. Let's focus on our homework, and we'll see you guys in 6 months. 6 months comes around. We open up the app. It crashes on the opening screen. Nothing looks according to plan. The designs are all off. Everything's wrong. We had, as very young founders, thought that building an app was something so simple and completely neglected the fact that there's a concept of, oh, you have to design the app. You have to add product features, UI, UX flows. You have to have product management, project management. All these different things were missing. And I was freaking out. I was like, we
Mm.
just spent $30,000. What the heck just happened? It's like, this makes no sense. And it was rough. Like, I'm kind of like underplaying what actually happened. I was really furious. I was like, we just lost, like, it's all over. But the point is, what we realized at that very moment was, we should actually, it's kind of our fault. We should have communicated more with them. We should have given them more guidance. Maybe we should have done things like design stuff for them. And slowly, these failures, like that one, taught us, okay, there's more things going on. And as we started to fix them after a bunch of rapid failures, we slowly started to progress to an app that actually was working. And we were getting close to 2018 when I was graduating. And we have our first version of an app that we launched on the day of my graduation. Something I didn't point out was Kadam initially started off as an app for multiple services. It was housework, errands, yard work. Tutoring was one of the group, but we were trying to solve too many problems in one app. And so when we initially launched in 2018, every time we would get any sort of customers, we would not have enough providers and back and forth. So now we go one extra year of trying to figure out what's going wrong. And slowly we discover there's a thing called a business plan, and we applied to a business plan competition. We don't make it. But then in 2019, we got invited to apply to this Jones Foster accelerator. It's an accelerator at the University of Washington that gives you $25,000 if you actually make it through. And we were like, there were so many companies who could have been part of this. There were only 7 selected, and we were somehow one of the teams selected. Even after that big failure, that was, again, when you're facing failures as a young entrepreneur, they're big deals. It's every time it feels like your child, like, something happened to your baby. And also you don't learn that tolerance to failure until you face enough. And so they were all big failures to us. But so the point is, we make it in and we're shocked. This was one of the biggest accomplishments we've ever done. And during this process, they teach us, you're focusing on too much. Let's hone down, choose your favorite subject or your service. And us as founders who were just students, we had a huge founder market fit, and we honed down on tutoring. We launched our in-person tutoring early 2020. We get our first customers, our first real revenue for the first time ever. Pandemic hits, everything shuts down, nobody can meet up for in-person tutoring, and once again, we think
Mm.
it's all over. And I'm gonna fast forward a little bit more, just like, let's say 6 months later, we discover the rise of social media. There's a whole story on how we got started, but to us, that's where everything aligned. Pop off on social media, make students see education in a fun way, build an online version of the app, and then late 2020, it's all been going uphill since then.
Wow. So literally a 4-year journey, struggle, trial and error, failures before you got to the point, which is, I think it's a really good takeaway for people listening to this who might be interested in that same kind of path, that you didn't just hit 2.5 million subscribers in the
Overnight, yeah.
first 6 months that you were doing this. It took a while to get there. And I love there was a thing you said, that the tolerance to failure was a lot lower in those early days. I imagine that was tied very much to I mean, you're not only putting your own time into this, but you were putting your own money into this. And the feeling of, like you said, we just spent $30,000 on something that we can't use. I can imagine that would be a lot harder to take when that's coming out of your own bank account than when that's coming out of, an investment or some kind of thing like that. That's got to be really rough to feel that, especially really early in the process.
You're right. Again, the way I communicated it, I was trying to make it kind of motivational. I didn't want to make it too sad or detrimental of
Oh, it
how
must
it
have been
felt. But
devastating.
you need to
Yeah,
understand, like $30,000 in the bank and it's all gone as a kid, and like you're like, oh my god, I just made $30,000 somehow and it's all gone. And I also had this great idea. Now I have no idea how we're gonna get started. Like it,
yeah,
and again, your first failure, you don't understand. And by the way, being an entrepreneur, it's the name of the game. You fail more times than you win. But when you win, the goal is the win is gonna be so big, it overshadows the failures. But you don't
right.
realize that early on, especially when there's not that many people around you who've done something similar and you're trying to figure it
Hmm.
out all on your own.
Yeah, you're just getting it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm curious about is how does the app actually work? So what, like, I come on for tutoring, but like, what's the process and what's the idea behind it?
Well, that's a perfect way to segue you into the customer journey. So I'm just gonna throw in the social media aspect. You're on social media, you run to one of our videos, you're captivated by it. Most of our videos have nothing to do with education. They just appeal to students. Down the line, as you follow us, you run into one of our videos that showcases our app. You're stuck on your homework, and most of the time, people come in because they're urgent, something is due. So they come in just like Uber, you need it now. I'm about to like fail this if I don't get help. I remember Kadama, I click the link in the bio, and now I'm on the app. Within seconds, you send out your request, whatever material you need help with. It gets broadcasted to the tutors. You get a few options, and you select the tutor that needs help, that you think will be best to help you. Again, it's very interactive, so you can see videos of the tutor in action. We have like essentially a social media within our app, so you can see basically TikTok style videos of the tutors in the video to kind of resonate with them, see their experiences, and you can text them in the app, you can video call them, you can send files, everything you can do in a social app, we have it. And on top of that, you win rewards in between sessions. So to motivate you to keep learning, you can unlock things like gift cards, Target gift cards, and so forth. So you can get the help however you need. Usually the tutor tells you, I think this is best over video, or maybe it's sometimes what we realize is a lot of students prefer to only get help through text, which is completely fine because you can annotate files and so forth. And so we give you all the tools. There's no enforcement in terms of which way you want to learn. We let the tutor and the student determine that. You easily pay in the app, and then that's it. You can save your favorite tutors and use them whenever you need them.
How intentional was that approach to social media? You said that you you intentionally weren't just demoing the app, because you wouldn't have grown to 2.5 million subscribers if it was just like, here's how Kadama works. But you were putting things out there that people were interested in. How much of a process or a plan had you thought through for that kind of approach to social media? Because there's something really genius about that you distilled the essence of this thing down to learning something,
Mhm.
but you separated the notion of learning something academic from learning something that you need right now, or something useful, or something you didn't know. But then you've also made this connection between, I learned something from this guy who's connected to Kadama. I should try out Kadama to see if I can learn something that I need to do for school. That seems like this sort of three-dimensional chess approach. And how intentional was that? Or was that just sort of, it worked, that you were just trying to get a name out there, and it kind of clicked after the fact? Like, did you plan this, or was this something that you didn't know was going to work and it just did?
Yes, amazing question. First of all, in this kind of scenario, there's a lot of things that are reactive, but coming into it, a lot of it was calculated. Let me explain what I mean by that. The Kadama part was calculated, but there's a reason we did really well there. If we just segue, I would say between 3 months to 4 months back, that was around the time where TikTok was just coming to fruition, and I was working at Apple. I recognized like people are going viral. And I remember there was another app called Vine back in the day. It was something
Yeah.
similar. It did really
Yeah.
well, but unfortunately it shut down. But the point is, I will never forget the day where I was like, dang, I wish I was part of that era. And I always felt that deep down, like I missed a wave. But when I saw TikTok, I was like, these are the same characteristics of success. TikTok will be in everybody's hands. Everybody was making fun of it at that time. I remember I told it to my coworkers at Apple. They laughed at me. How is a grown man like you gonna go on an app where it's just a bunch of kids? And I'm like, you don't understand. This is how it is now. This is gonna change. It's just a trend. But nobody understood it. And I even potentially pitched it. I think I pitched it to some of my advisors. They didn't understand how this can ever be any value to Kadama. They just thought approach this like the old school way. But I was like, okay, I'm not gonna embarrass our brand. If you guys think it's gonna be an embarrassment, I'm gonna go build my own presence on social media. So I make my own Amin Shaykho page, and I was like, okay, well, people are going viral. What can I do? So I threw out a random video because I thought it was funny of my friend eating an In-N-Out burger. And for those who know In-N-Out burger, it's controversial because some people either love it, some people hate it. And he was eating it in a very suspenseful way. He takes a few bites, the shoes on it, looks at the camera. After like 15 seconds of silence, he's like, this is disgusting. A war started in the comments. That video went viral, and I was like, that's it. We need to keep making videos. My brother, who was also my co-founder, like we started collaborating together. We work really well together, and we started to make so many other series on TikTok, like a missing girl series where we have to solve the clues. A bunch of things that were catching like 5 million views a video, 10 million views, 15 million views a video. And at that point, we cracked social media. And this was a few months before we launched Kadama. It was like the late 2020. And at that point, we understood that kids, when I say kids, I'm talking Gen Z, primarily high school, college, because that's our target demographic. They don't think education is fun. If we come off and show them a video of somebody getting tutoring or anything related to something of that nature, they're not going to watch it. So we tried a few different ideas, and my brother was like, well, me and him, these are just long conversations. We're like, well, let's just see if we can add value as long as that value falls within education. And to us, we realized, well, kids like to save 30% off shopping at Starbucks, for example. Oh, kids also want to know if somebody on Snapchat put them on red, but they don't know about it, right? Like all these different juicy things, or here's how to find if somebody's cheating on you. All these juicy or even money saving hacks, or even teaching you about an iPhone, they'll all at the end of the day are considered education. And so, but they're education in a way that resonates because we're teaching you things that you actually care about. And that was the moment it clicked. Life hacks was the theme. And people knew us as a brand that will teach them things that they care about. And when I'm saying people, I'm talking students. So then naturally, when we started to talk about, oh, by the way, like video, like within like 10 videos, those started going viral like crazy. Within 3 months, we hit 1 million followers. I think we were the first education company ever to hit 1 million followers, probably one of the first companies ever. And during that process, we were like, okay, well, to promote our app, how do we do it in a way that's unique? We can't just show you getting tutoring. So instead, let's just go grab an onion. There's a few videos we did, but one prominent one was grabbed an onion. We poured Chick-fil-A sauce on it, took a huge bite. That was the clickbait. And it segued you to 3 apps that help you get a 4.0. We snuck our app in the middle so it doesn't look like an advertisement. That took us to like number 7 on this app store charts. And I believe 30,000, 20,000 downloads. We kept repeating that because that was a miraculous formula. But the unique thing here is people knew us as a brand that gives you value. And at the end of the day, because they're all students, we're giving them value in education. And we just happen to be promoting our app for those kind of life hacks. And that's how we got kickstarted. And that's why, we are here today.
We're going to need to feature a few of those videos in the episode notes.
I'll send you the highlighted ones. Yeah.
Yeah, the highlight reel. So you launched the sort of current iteration of Kadama in 2020, and you were pushing this through social media primarily, and obviously through word of mouth. People who use it would tell other people about it. What kind of reception did you get from not just the students who were using it, but then also from the press, from the world at large, from the schools? What was the reception to something that gigified, if that's a verb, gigified tutoring?
Well, first of all, we made Forbes 30 under 30, both on the education list and on the youngest list. I think the ages were 18, 21, 23, me and my co-founders. And the reason we made it on was our approach to making students love learning through social media, something that's never been done before.
Mhm.
And across reception from our customers. So obviously we made a lot of press, USA Today, Fox, etc., which is amazing. And obviously we're grateful for that recognition. But at the end of the day, customers are who we care about the most and what they think matters to us the most. And we had a phenomenal reception to the point where it's overwhelming. And we had to quickly realize that we couldn't appeal to all students at once. We had to focus on certain demographics who had the best conversion rates, who had good purchasing power. Once we perfected that, we can go backwards and appeal to the ones who didn't have purchasing power. So that's the concept of a freemium mode, a free version, and then a paid version, right? Every single student was coming to our app, but then we intentionally chose to actually focus on certain demographics and push other students out because as a company, you need to focus on retention of paying customers. And if you don't do that, especially if your app is a paid app, everything else just goes down because you're basically burning money to facilitate a free version for them. And there's a whole ball game there, a lot of big failures, but ultimately the data we needed, the data-driven approach to understand who our right customer is and build the best experience for them is what actually eventually made us profitable 2 years after we launched in 2022.
I'm actually curious, like, what are the most popular tutoring topics on the app? Like, what do most people come in for?
Yeah, so on our app, we have like all the high school subjects, middle school subjects, and we have all the, again, when I say, I'm saying most of the first and second tier of college, university. So think about it like essentially any homework assignment, you'll come and find somebody. And within that, we see the biggest distribution in science, math, English, and history.
So the core subjects.
Just because these are the classes that you essentially have to take all the way through your third year of college. And so there's obviously going to be more demand within that.
Do you see like spikes in traffic around certain times of the year, like during
Mm-hmm.
finals time and stuff like that?
Yeah, of course. Like think about it, final season, midterm seasons are big spikes, right? End of spring quarter, end of fall quarter, winter quarter. It's really our traffic is like in line with what you see with the school schedule. So whenever there's like no homework, it's reflected in the app. Whenever there's a lot of homework, it's reflected in the app. Like any other ed tech company, most of them that are like driven by K to 12 college.
Yeah, and by customer need.
Yeah, customer need.
One of the things that when we had just our initial touch base call, one of the things that you talked about, which I thought was really fascinating, was the way that you strive to connect the students with their tutors. And I wonder if you can talk about that in addition to, because the tutors are meeting a need. Obviously, the student says, hey, I've got this assignment. I don't understand how to do it. Help me. So there's a real need there. But beyond that, you've done some work to really connect, to make connections that are going to keep people coming back. And can you talk about that a little bit as well?
Yeah. No, I love this because this is really what I would say this is the core, which was the hardest to solve for and build for. But us being Gen Z founders who really understood how Gen Z think about education and not installing biases or opinions that did not come from how they think is what wired the success here. What I mean by that, early on, we recognized students, most, and again, I do not want to be generalizing. I'm just going to say most, especially from the data we've collected, they are more receptive to what their friends say, what they're seeing on social media, than maybe what an instructor would have to say, or maybe even a parent. And early on, it was clear to us that if we pair students with such people, aka tutors of similar age, so most of our tutors are college age, which is a few years away, or maybe even the same age as our students, we would have that. Why, you may ask? They both probably are watching the same NBA game. They're watching the same sports games happening. They like the same type of movies, TV show, video games, and there's a lot of conversation and relatability that's sparked from there. So now when they come to get homework, a tutor could spark off a conversation and all of a sudden they've captivated that student because like, oh wow, he's just like my friend. In fact, he's even cooler than my friend or she's even cooler than my friend. And that actually ends up turning into a relationship, a friendship relationship in parallel to this semester getting help with. And by the way, this is stuff that as we start to realize, we start to build more and more upon. And I'm like kind of explaining to you from the perspective we noticed it, to the point where in some cases they would build such strong relationships. A lot of times they would try to take it off the app. Obviously, us as a business, we built a lot of off-platform prevention measures that prevent anybody from leaving the app. Huge revenue savings there, but we'll talk about that later. But the point is the relationships were so good that was happening. And by default, the students were more receptive to the tutor. They were more willing to trust them. Learning was made easier. A lot of students come in with a perception that they don't want to learn at all. There's alternative tools out there. I don't want to name them, where you don't necessarily have to learn to get help with your homework. They come in with that, but the tutor, because they built that trust with them, changes their mentality towards it, where they can actually show them that there's a value proposition to learning. And again, because they're actually engaged with the conversation, it stems out well. And for example, I had mentioned this to you earlier, in a quarter from our active students, we see like 14 hours of communication because they enjoy talking so much. And again, when I'm saying 14 hours, I'm not saying, oh, wow, we were able to get them to spend 14 hours a quarter talking about homework. No, a lot of it is just talking about fun stuff that they like about. But in parallel or simultaneously, there's that assistance with homework. And that is really the core. When you look very down deep, that's what's powering our app. And it's very hard for another app to come in and reproduce that. It's because of the moving pieces and how we were able to get it to where it is today.
Yeah. You've talked a little bit about the purpose of Kadama as not just being for tutoring, that there's something more to it in your mind. Can you just speak to that for a minute?
Correct. There's the concept right now of helping you with your homework in real time. And most of our customers come for the urgent help. And we've tailored our app to optimize for that. But the real goal for us here is to really change the perception that learning is boring. And we have a slogan, we use it everywhere. It's just like, there's a stigma that Gen Z find learning boring, but we think that that's not true if you approach learning in a way where you'll enjoy it. And I think our goal is to foster, to show them that there is value from learning, whether it's the instant gratification of getting an A, or whether in 2 years from now, when you go to apply for your job, it's going to make you land that job. There's a way you can resonate with them. And again, that's something that we're trying to shape through this. And it really builds upon to a bigger goal I have and my company has. But at the very moment, shaping how students think, their perception of learning, whether it's through our social media videos or in the app, is like the big focus. And obviously, the way we're doing it is through your assignments right now.
Mm-hmm. So the thing that we haven't touched on is the sort of thing I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are thinking about, which is cheating, which is the big thing hanging over any tutoring platform or any homework help platform. It's very easy for an app to say, hey, just come on our app, pay us some money, we'll make sure you get the answers you need.
Right.
And like you said, there are places out there that you can do that. I mean, you can even just go to AI for help now. There's plenty of options. What is your approach to preventing cheating, and how successful are you at that?
Correct. And obviously, even now, like just a year ago, with the introduction of, ChatGPT making it so popular, you can almost put in like various type of assignments and just get the answer like that. Even if take us out of the picture right now, why would, when a student takes 2 seconds to get an answer, that'll go and give you an A. Why? You've reduced the motivation that was already, low in the first place to learn for a lot of students. I'm not saying all students, but a lot. And there's always these different tools, and to us, they're actually the biggest obstacle now, because the more widely used they are, the challenge it is for us to, try to change that perception, because now there's bigger reasons, or there's bigger forces against us, right? And obviously there is a solution, by the way. I think if schools can adopt, and I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm just setting the prefix here. If schools do adopt in a way where we can use AI as a tool, or whatever those things, as just a tool to the end destination, let's say that instead of grading you on the homework, which you can easily run through AI, instead they just grade you on how do you apply something in real time, right? Where you can use them as a tool, but at the end of the day, if you don't know how to apply it, you're not going to pass. Now people are going to have to gravitate back to actually learning those foundations instead of just easily pumping up their grades. So when we go back to our app, and these were principles we had even before ChatGPT and the rise of AI at that scale, not only do we have guidelines that tell tutors, okay, well, across all areas, not even just tutoring, or not even just cheating, here's what you can and can't do with a student, here's what's allowed, here's what's not allowed. Within the concept of teaching, if a student comes and says, do my assignment, and so forth, here's how you're supposed to respond, right? So there's all these guidelines that are enforceable, by the way. You could lose your account. So there's high stakes to them. But at the end of the day, we know disciplining necessarily or just, enforcing something through force is not the best way, to teach young children, right? It's more about showing them why and letting them reasoning through. And that's the whole action and the whole, I would say, the biggest focus that we have in the trust that we're taking here with our tutors. And so let me give you an example. And there's levels to it. Different students may come onto the app with different levels of persistence on having the tutor do the work for them. So the tutor is responsible for recognizing that and based on that, adjusting how they approach it. Let's say a student says, I will literally, if you do not give me the answer right now, I'm not gonna name any companies, but I'm gonna go use that company to get the answer, right? The tutor will be like, okay, well, how about this? How about I'll still give you the answer, but how about we do it this way? Let's do a video call. I'll share my screen and I'm just gonna run you down through the problem. Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. You just have to watch me solve it. And if once I get to line, like whatever the final line is, you'll get your answer. All you have to do is watch. But while that's happening, the tutor is probably asking questions like, why do you think I did this? Or just trying to get them to be engaged. And then let's say they give them the answer. We think that even though at the end of the day, they didn't necessarily do any solving, we can compare this to watching an educational video on Khan Academy or watching an educational video on YouTube. It's a different form of learning, but at least we were able to show them a few things and have them at least use their brain a little bit, because we know that if we had just said, no, we're only going to tutor you the traditional way, let's actually all be honest with ourselves. They're going to open up that AI calculator app, go on the app store. There's a bunch of those AI, take a photo, get an answer, ChatGPT, get the answer just like that. So for us, we did a push to the right direction versus default. And then again, we build off, because that's how we tie back to my initial answer. When they build those relationships with the tutors, we see a lot of the times both the tutor, because the tutor is a college student, and the student, they're both trying to major in engineering. And then the tutor could literally say something as simple as, by the way, this class is how I was able to get into my chemical engineering major. You should focus on it. And you'll be shocked how a person trying to cheat in that class will start to actually want to learn it, because they had another person their age tell them something. I could go on and on about this. I love it so much. I'm passionate about it. But I feel like that kind of gives you the high level answer that you're looking for.
Well, being a parent with a study of an N of 2 children, I can definitely confirm that it's going to be more meaningful sometimes coming from someone else. I wanted to, though, go back to something you said, because you were talking about the comparison to something like Khan Academy. The difference with that is that if I need to solve a problem, I can go to Khan Academy and I can watch someone potentially solve the exact same kind of problem. The difference would be that I'm watching them solve it with different numbers, different calculations, potentially slightly different setup, something like that. And so my brain is working to make the connection between what they're doing and what I need to do. And that's the basis of learning much of math or science, where it's all scaffolded, it's all based on prior knowledge and applying the prior knowledge to the current thing that you're trying to solve. What I think a critic would say is the difference is that in the scenario that you outlined, the student doesn't need to use their brain very much. Like, they can kind of go through the motions and say, yeah, sure, yeah, I get it, okay, and then the problem gets solved for them. And so my question would then be, how confident are you that said student who is intending to cheat by using your platform is actually going to have a sort of a come to the light moment of, oh, I understand that this actually is something that's important, versus just continually coming back to that tutor and saying, hey, I'm going to just go to Gen AI again. You better show me how to do this problem. Like, are you able to track that? And have you seen those results really turn around?
Yeah, no, first of all, great question. And everything I'm saying today is from actual data and experience. There's no
Great.
speculation.
Okay,
Again,
great.
I gave you guys one example and I made it simple. There's a lot of context in terms of what the problem was, how numbers were manipulated, what the tutor could have done.
Mhm.
Every tutor approaches it differently. I was giving the example in the worst case, like this is the worst case scenario, by the way. Like
Oh,
usually you should
absolutely.
start
Yeah.
off with the best case scenario, right? The
Yeah.
worst case is a very aggressive student. This is not always the case, but I wanted to focus on it for the sake of this conversation.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, right, when the tutor is interacting with the student, there's various things that they could do, again, to help them think and so forth. But the point is here, if actually in this scenario, they're going to go and pull up the exact answer because AI can do it with any, again, I'm going to pigeonhole in this just because this is the example you brought me. But let's just say we're dealing, Khan Academy was just an example. That's like, just showing you one value of, this interaction is like, it could just essentially be as if you're learning through video. But the point is, let's say they were doing the exact numbers as the assignment. And the student could actually go to an AI and get the answer, right? Well, we think about it like this, right? The tutor also sometimes they could go and use an AI to validate that claim. But sometimes there's a reason why the student does that. Why would they even come pay on an app when they can go get it for free for most of those IIs, right? There's usually a bigger motive. In this case, they probably have more assignments, and the other assignments the AI wasn't able to do. So that's where the tutor can recognize that and understand, well, on this assignment, maybe I'm doing this, but for the future assignments, like clearly he's paying me for a reason. All these AI tools, a lot of them are free if you delete them and download them again, right? So he's probably gonna get help on a bigger and larger assignment. In that case, he has no other option but listen to what I say. They have more leverage there, and they can actually enforce more collaboration with the student. So the point is they need to build that trust. That's a good example. Again, a lot of other students may not even start like this. This was the worst case. A lot of times they come in off the bat, okay, just teach me. You know what I'm trying to say?
Help me out.
But again, it's all subjective. It's all perception and different, right? And again, it ties back to what I told you earlier. It's about every single student is different. The way they think, the way they approach in real time, how do you handle it? And so it's impossible for me to give you an example right now without reading word for word what happened in the chat. But I'm giving you high level in terms of our approach and philosophy. And it's done really well because we also have a lot of students who come to us with testimonials explaining what they've gone through. We had a student, for example, who she came from India, didn't speak much English. Same thing with parents. She considered dropping out of her major because she thought it was way too hard. She couldn't survive. She's like, I credit 4 tutors. She names them all. They're the reason I survived school.
Wow.
And imagine she was at the lowest point ever where she had to pass her classes. Cheating was probably something of an option to her. And they essentially turned everything around to making her enjoy the things and even being the top student. There was another student who landed a job at Amazon. So we have so many success stories of exactly what I'm communicating right now. And I don't think these kind of success stories for the average student of just getting an answer from an AI or something like that would happen, right? Because for us, there's a whole psychological play that we're taking. And again, we have an even bigger plan once we start integrating AI with what we're doing.
Yeah, and I love that you're getting those testimonials. It's wonderful to hear that kind of stuff is happening. And I also love that you're saying that what you're telling us is backed by the data, that this isn't just speculation, you're actually studying it. And then the other thing is, we're talking about AI. This kind of thing has been around for, I don't even know how long, but with Wolfram Alpha, literally someone can go in and plug an equation into it and it will solve it step by step. It's not even, you don't have to go to Gen AI.
Correct.
You go to something that's been around for at least 10 years, maybe 15. I forget how old that platform is. And it's going to solve it for you. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. There are other free options out there. So I think it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, that the approach is to try to turn that student towards someone who's more interested in learning. And like you said, the purpose of the platform is to help people understand the value of learning, not just to get an answer. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm also curious, do you say I sign up to be a tutor, I've never taught before, do I get some kind of instruction? Is there an onboarding process for me where you explain the way that you expect me to work with the students? Is there evaluation of how well I'm working with the students? What's your quality control like?
Yeah, I for sure will address that question. But just to quickly summarize that or conclude, I want to make it clear. By the way, I have a lot of opinions in how education is today. And I feel like I can make a lot of change, and I'm trying to do that to the best of my ability. But I've seen there's not a lot of people, like I'm not going to generalize, but there are some people who are too optimistic with the way students learn. And then there's on the other side where it's like, okay, like let's just say no to everything. Let's ban everything. You can't use anything, right? So it's like, we trust them too much, and then we don't trust them at all. We're going to ban everything. It's, first of all, it's not as clear as A and Z. It's more of a per person basis, and it's a fluctuating thing. And that has to be better addressed, because the solution isn't to just ban AI, and the solution isn't just to let people roam freely or students roam freely. And again, that's what I'm trying to do. And there's a lot I would love to do with the school system, because a lot of what we're dealing with today, is direct result from what's going on in the school system. And there's good and there's things that could be improved. But to answer your question, yes, there's a huge onboarding process for our tutors. It's all happening in the app, and it's really, really, I actually love it. We worked years to make it so good. Off the bat, you'll do a tutor application, things like background check, ID, identity, all will be verified. Then, based on what you're trying to tutor, you'll be taking a quiz in the app. So if you're doing math, you're gonna have to take a calculus quiz if you're doing calculus. If you're doing anything related to English, a writing quiz plus maybe another quiz, a bunch of these things. Let's say you pass on. And I'm not gonna go too deep here, but in real time, we can distinguish if a tutor is doing good or bad. And based on that, reward them or have disciplinary actions, right? And so there's reactive time in real time, plus the fixed onboarding stuff, and then plus, real time customer support and our team seeing this. So it's a really, really powerful system that we have. And I do think we have one of the best systems, out there.
You mentioned schools and your interest in seeing them shift the way that they do education, and I have that same interest in many ways. Where have you gone with relationships with schools? Have you built or have you tried to build relationships with schools where they would say supplement the education that's happening in their school building by giving students access to Kadama? Or do you have anything in mind for how you might interact with the school systems?
Yeah, no, first of all, we currently don't. We would love to work with schools for sure. I think the biggest challenge off the bat is we recognize that when dealing with schools, it's been very slow. Response times from the schools we've tried to reach out to at least, and even when we've talked through the chain out of school, takes years just to get a decision. And for us, when we could just go on social media, post a video, and get a bunch of students in literally seconds, the concept of gaining customers is so much easier from how we're doing it right now. So we wouldn't gain too much of that from the schools. In fact, like in all these schools, a lot of them are already using our app, or even if they don't use our app, they follow us on social media. Like we've reached like tens of millions of unique students in America, right? Like it's big. But again, the value with schools would be a bit different. It would be more about how can we work together so we're on the same team and changing the perception of learning, making learning fun. How us as founders, Gen Z, who literally my youngest co-founder is 21, like just graduating school. Like we know the students, and again, with social media, we have data that nobody else in the world has. When we have 2.5 million followers of just Gen Z students, and we not in the world, but the most colleges, for example, right? All at the palm of our hands, and we know stuff that a lot of people don't know. And how could we work together from the school, level all the way down to what we're doing to change and make learning better and move into the future? There's a lot of things that have progressed in the last 10 years. There's a lot of things within school that haven't progressed that do need to progress. And how could we be on the same team to do so? And so I would love to do that, work with government, schools. There's a lot of ideas we have, and we get things done, as you can see with my company. And obviously, there's a lot of perspectives that we don't know, but I for sure know we can make a lot of positive change.
Yeah, well, I'm hopeful that some schools out there are listening to this and going, hey, yeah, we could actually start to think about how our students are thinking about education, not just partner with you on the tutoring side. So hopefully somebody reaches out with some interest on that.
Yeah, that'd
What's
be cool.
next for Kadama? Where do you go from here?
Obviously, the biggest thing that everybody could just guess is AI, but for us, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, we're adding AI. We have a huge game plan. I'm not going to talk too much about it right now, but what I can say right now is AI for sure, for the next few years at least, is not going to be replacing the human tutor 100%. But it's crazy to say that we're going to also keep tutors with no AI. I think the future for us is empowering our tutors with AI as tools. Something as simple as I'm helping you factor an equation. Like you can just forget a concept. You're a human. Oh, you won't need to forget it if you have access to a tool. So it's better in teaching the students, but also in terms of driving down costs for customers. We see a human tutor plus AI integration that will make us even more accessible. Again, we have only one flaw with our app. Otherwise, I think we'd have every single student in the world using us. The only reason, by the way, like 90 something percent data, the biggest drop off is that they just simply can't afford the app. If we solve that, it's game changer in terms of our reach, and we have a plan to do that we're working on right now. And yeah, so that's where I'll leave it.
I literally just had a conversation today with someone about what is the future of AI and tutoring/teaching, and I was advocating for, I think, exactly what you're thinking about, which is that it has to be a supplement to the teaching, whether it's the supplement to the instruction or a supplement to the assessment, and not a replacement for it, because there's so much more that goes into teaching than just the transfer of information. But there's emotional elements, and there's the empathy that a teacher can show, and there's all that stuff that you can't. ChatGPT is not real effective at encouragement when it's coming from a machine, a predictive engine. But if we can use these tools for supplementation to what a tutor can do, and I have a feeling, and I know you don't want to comment too far on where you're going, but I would hope that where you're going is somewhere in line with you to supplement what that one-on-one tutoring can do by using the AI for assessment and saying, hey, here's something that we've learned about you. You might want to get tutoring on this because you're missing this key concept, or you have a gap in your knowledge and you should come back to us for this. And here's a person who specializes in that. This tutor's going to be amazing at it, or the one you've been using is, or whatever. But to use the AI to make as sort of the connective tissue between those places that you need to understand things better and the people who can really help you understand things better, that feels like a really, really key use of the AI. So at least I'm rooting for you to go in that direction if that's not something that's already on the agenda.
I'll leave this up to interpretation, but what I can tell you for sure is I believe we're either the biggest or one of the biggest like text-based tutoring app in the world. Probably even the biggest. A lot of tutoring happens either through phone call, maybe even through in person. But for us, text-based, because Gen Z communicate emotions really well through text. So there's a lot we could learn from there. And obviously we have a lot of data, files, previous assignments, interactions, and we have a lot of ways we can take this. But I trust that what we have in mind is something that's going to make a huge, huge impact in learning.
Nice. That's a great place to leave this. Well, I mean, thank you so much for joining us. This was really interesting to hear, not just about the platform, but also about how you got it to the position that it's in, and just some of the social media tricks that you've used to generate that kind of buzz. Like I said, we'll put links to the platform, to your web pages. I definitely want to feature some of those viral videos. That onion one, I'm definitely looking forward to watching that.
Yeah.
But you got some really fun stuff to share, so we'll make sure to put those in the episode notes. And if there's anything else that we should share, I hope you'll send it my way so we can include it. But for now, just thank you so much for joining us, and really just thank you for sharing all of this. It was really interesting to learn about.
Of course, this was a very fun conversation. Thank you both for having me today.
All right. So, folks, thanks for listening, and always keep learning.
Did you learn something just now? Get the full episode of Ways We Learn wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love to get your rating or review.